Greetings, Guardians, my name is Bife here. Today we're continuing to talk about the raid lore from Root of Nightmares, and we're going to focus on the Scions and their relationship with the Nezarec's acolytes. In particular, this video is going to give us a chance to understand better how the acolytes of Nezarec operate, how Scions have interacted with Nezarec, and as a result, we're going to learn the story of one Scion in particular. Her name is Acacia, and her story has had more than its fair share of twists that involve Nezarec. So, before we begin, we've already heard some little bits and pieces that link the Scions to Nezarec, but for the sake of completeness, let's go over those one more time. From the Confessions lore book from back in the Season of Opulence, we learned about a Scion counselor to Calus called Match. Match described the way that the Scions used to have a religion that suggested that there was a spark of divinity in everyone. However, this religion was overthrown when the so-called God thoughts of the Scion people began to manifest and conquer them. It was speculated, given Match's description, that Nezarec might have been one of these God thoughts. After that, we also got a little extra input from our friendly neighborhood radio addresses in Neomuna. Jisoo Colorando gives us an interesting look into the nature of the Scions and their connection to Nezarec. Take a listen.
Welcome to Neomuna Civil News. I'm Jisoo Colorando. Authorities have questioned the connection between the entity Nezarec and the Scion people, a client species of the Cabal Empire. Ethnographers note recurring motifs in Scion art and ritual, as well as the potent psychic abilities exhibited by both parties. Neomuna Civil News will provide updates as they become available.
So it appears that Nezarec's link to the Scions is pretty well ingrained based on those two sources alone, although it's never outright confirmed. At least it wasn't, up until now. In today's lore, I'm going to read you an account from one of the acolytes of Nezarec. This is actually a moment at which they went out into the jungle and found a Scion in the wild, and it's from those experiences that all of our lore on Nezarec and his true interactions with the Scions is based. The lore tabs here are found in the Warlock armor known as the Detestation set. I'm going to read this log in its entirety from 1st to 5th entry. As a note, by the way, detestation probably comes from the word detest, which means to hate something. So, just keep that in mind as we start this reading. Acolytes of Nezarec, Acacia 1. The jungle density was oppressive and threatened to keep inexperienced explorers from traversing it. Though I had never navigated such a biome, I did not let it deter me. The humidity, the bugs, the overgrowth, I endured them all. I knew she was here. Her trail was almost impossible to find, let alone follow, but she was close. A few days passed before I stumbled on a cave hidden by wild and unwieldy bushes. Even in the cover of night, I could see her there, collecting berries. I snapped a twig under my foot. She spun, palm alight in purple aura, her singular eye trained on me. I raised my hands immediately. I mean you no harm. I'm just a traveler looking for a place to lay my head for the night. I'm unarmed. I waited patiently, careful not to move an inch as she searched my body for anything that could cause her harm. When she found nothing but a tome in my bag, she considered me with a cautious pause, one hand still bright purple. Then she gave a quick nod and walked toward her camp within the cave. The fire she kept was small but warm, and once we finished eating, she smothered it with some dry dirt. I leaned my head against a wooden log and closed my eyes. Some time passed before I finally heard her shift. She had turned to lie on her back. I fixed my eyes on the Scion before me, and waited. I waited until I heard her troubled breathing and whimpers before I got up. As I approached, my eyes settled on her face. It was difficult to get a good look in the dark, moonlight barely trickling into the cave. She writhed. It was a nightmare. One of his. It had to be. I reached out to her. My fingers found the flesh of her arm. In an instant, I was wrapped in a whirlwind. The overwhelming screams, the voices, the haunting imagery of his face, the very essence of fear. I couldn't rip myself from it. I was right. It was him. A purple blast from her hand hit me. I landed with a rough thud, and before I knew it, she was standing over me. Her breaths were loud, and her body language read angry with the way the energy from her hands radiated up her arms. I gazed up, wide-eyed. "I'm sorry," I managed, hands up again. I'm looking for him, for Nezarec. And you were the first being I found that has come into contact with him outside my family." She remained defensive. I simply want to see his power, to see what your experience was like with him." At this, her demeanor softened, but only slightly. We had come to an understanding. She backed up and sat on the log. I cautiously got to my feet and joined her. "Please," I begged. After a long pause, she looked at me. I held her gaze until my vision was suddenly warped. What seems to be the case is that our acolyte here experiences a vision given to him or her, their gender isn't stated, by Acacia. That vision proceeds as follows. "The structure I find myself in resembles a simple, quaint home. It's small, filled with decorations donning symbols I do not recognize. At the center of the room, 2 scions sleep peacefully among a stack of blankets and pillows. I watch the memory unfold from one of the corners. Acacia. The name echoes in my mind. Her name. From behind me, a sinister presence stirs. Goosebumps dart over my skin, and familiar whispers, ones I heard plenty of times in my life, increase in volume. I turn to look at the home's entrance, and it is consumed in darkness, windows and all. I wait with bated breath. A ring of eyes materializes in the window. Nezarec. At the sound of his name, the shadows from the window expand and devour all the light in the room. Acacia and the other scion are the only figures that I can see. Darkness oozes down toward them. I watch intently, unable to take my eyes off the spectacle. A hand forms, claws outstretched. His arm, then his face. The shape of his 2-horned headpiece, the ring of eyes, the cacophony of hisses and screams fills the void while the 2 remain fast asleep. Nezarec reaches for the scion sleeping beside Acacia. The tips of his claws drag down across the skin, only to stop at his closed eye. The darkness swirls, then Nezarec vanishes, leaving nothing but moonlight. He was chosen. The phrase repeats throughout the rest of Acacia's memory. The words bounce around the walls of my mind. It becomes hard to focus. Different voices flood in, mixing with hers. Different inflections, all different scions. He had been chosen. I watch a group of large, ornately dressed scions enter Acacia's home in the dead of night. They exchange loud, indiscernible words and restrain her. Anguished sounds leave her as she watches them take her partner away. He is powerful. He will sate Nezarec for a long time. Be thankful he was chosen. The different phrases blend haphazardly. The memory slowly fades, and the images bleed into one another until I see a group of scions at the center of the chaos. Seated among them is Acacia's partner. I feel the weight of her pain on my chest, but darkness creeps in. Hundreds of claws rip and shred the edges of the memory. Acacia's pained wails join Nezarec's symphony. Her partner jolts in different directions as if his body is ripping apart. A purple hue envelops him. He rises from his seat, levitating off the ground, and dark tendrils attach themselves to his shadow to siphon his power. He lets out a pained shout. Suddenly, my reality warps again, and I'm thrust back into the real world. The dizziness hits me like a crashing wave. I lean over the log and throw up. The hatred Acacia felt for her people and Nezarec permeated every inch of the cave. I didn't know what to say. She knew what it meant to be touched by Nezarec. Though I would have preferred her partner, Acacia would have to suffice. "I understand your pain," I said, and reached out to touch her shoulder. She flinched, and her eye snapped to my face. "I know you feel hatred toward him, but that's good." Acacia got to her feet. The purple glow covered her hands once more. "He rewards those that survive his torment. You know his power. His nightmare needs to live on," I said gently, and stood to gaze up at her. Acacia looked agitated, impatient. I reached for my bag, and she extended her hand defensively. We held each other's gaze for a moment. I slowly pulled a tome from my bag and placed it gently on the log. I flipped the pages until I found an image of a familiar two-horned being. "My family has worshipped him for a long time," I told her. Acacia looked down at the pages. "Keep that hatred alive. That's what he wants." I sensed her apprehension. "If you help me bring him back to this plane, show him you're willing to serve him, he might just let your partner go," I added. It was difficult to tell what she was feeling, but after placing her hand on the tome, I affixed to the cover's image, I knew she would be desperate enough to try anything. It's never truly explained, but I think it would be fair to say that the character who finds Acacia is Michael, the leader of the Acolytes of Nezarec. If so, that tome that he pulls out is the same leather-bound tome that was wielded by his parent, the one who initiated him in the rituals of Nezarec, meaning that the cult leader of the Acolytes of Nezarec has come to find a scion specifically. Again, it's never stated what their gender is, so it's hard to tell. There's no point at which we get a clue from pronouns because only Acacia's pronouns are mentioned, so we don't get a he, they, she to identify this individual acolyte. However, what can be said is that the tome that they do pull out does help us push towards identifying them as Michael, because as best we know, only Michael and his family came into possession of the tome, which is presumably of hated Nezarec. This, combined with the notion that Michael's family has always worshipped Nezarec, gives us a point of commonality that really suggests him alone amongst the disciples. This excerpt tells us exactly how terrible Nezarec can truly be if he's allowed to freely terrorize a people. Sacrifices by scions, willing to simply feed Nezarec over time, endlessly dragging people from their homes so that their fear might be consumed. This is the fate that might have befallen us, and maybe even the people of Neomuna if Nezarec was left unchecked. Ritualistic sacrifice and open manifestations within the world hint but a fraction of Nezarec's true power when he is in corporeal form. This is the terror that twists, the chaos that creeps, the thing that keeps Nezarec alive, the fear that is born out of such things. Not merely the fear of the ones that die, but I imagine also the fear of the ones that survive, knowing that tomorrow could be their day. From here, the only question is really what happened to Acacia, and unfortunately it seems that there isn't much more information to it, but we have a little bit of information which allows us to speculate as opposed to placing a definitive answer. The trace rifle, Acacia's dejection, tells us that in a roundabout way, Acacia did not find the salvation for her partner that she was seeking. Dejection, for those that don't know, is a state of depression and can be sort of a hopelessness or a lack of encouragement. That tells us not everything, but the flavor text adds the context, "Do not believe their lies, run." Which tells me that it's likely the case that Acacia joined Michael momentarily and then perhaps fled the cult when she realized that all that Michael was telling her was exactly what she wanted to hear. Nezarek's acolytes only exist to advance Nezarek's goals, and it seems as though there is no easy way to return Acacia's partner. What I fear is that there is little that could have been done to free him from such a situation, but either way, this is where we are left now. With a greater understanding of Nezarek's relation to the Scions, an understanding of the power that he holds whenever he is able to manifest within both a corporeal form and when he has a hold over a society, and also we got a little bit more of an insight into what Michael's goals were, to understand Nezarek and to bring him forth once again onto a corporeal form on the material plane. But the thing is, this isn't where the story of the Acolytes ends, and this isn't the only time when we've seen Acolytes of Nezarek being haunted. There are 2 more stories about the Acolytes that I most definitely want to tell, and then maybe one that involves our old drifter friend. And that's not all the lore from the raid as it stands. For now though, I will leave you all with that. If you enjoyed, go ahead and leave a like, and if you have your own thoughts down below, leave them in the comments section. Is there a little bit of lore concerning Nezarek and the Scions that I might have missed? If there is, let me know. Of course, if you want more Destiny lore content, and more content from Destiny 2 Lightfall generally, go ahead and hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. But as per usual, know that your viewership as always has been quite enough for me. And that in the meantime, my name is Bife. Rodacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.